Least privilege as the default stance minimizes both intentional and accidental damage. It requires granting users only the permissions necessary for their duties and nothing beyond. For example, an accountant might view financial data but not modify security settings. In I-1 assessments, reviewers look for role-based access structures where rights are predefined and regularly validated. Over time, privilege creep, where users accumulate access as roles change, can quietly expand attack surfaces. Implemented least privilege policies stop this by requiring justification and approval for every added permission. Automated provisioning systems help enforce these boundaries, but oversight remains human. Managers must periodically review entitlements and revoke unneeded rights. Least privilege is less about restriction than containment. It ensures one compromised account cannot expose everything. This restraint transforms access from an open field into clearly fenced segments, protecting both users and data alike. The joiner, mover, and leaver lifecycle defines how user access changes through employment stages. In the joiner phase, new accounts are created with least privilege and documented approval. Movers, employees changing roles, should have old rights reviewed and removed before new ones are granted. Leavers must have all access promptly revoked. I-1 assessors expect written procedures covering each phase, supported by ticketing or identity management workflows. For example, onboarding might trigger an automatic request routed through a manager for approval, while offboarding automatically disables credentials upon HR termination entry. Gaps in this life cycle are major audit findings because they represent live accounts no longer tied to valid users. A mature program tracks each phase's completion with timestamps and responsible parties. The joiner-mover-leaver process is where access theory meets real human change, proving that privilege adapts responsibly over time. Timely deprovisioning and access revocation close the lifecycle loop. Once an employee departs or a contract ends, their accounts must be disabled immediately, ideally within hours. I-1 assessors check logs or tickets showing when termination notices were received and when access was removed. Delays in revocation create windows where dormant credentials can be exploited. Automation through identity governance systems or HR integrations helps, but manual verification remains necessary for sensitive platforms. For instance, Cloud Console access might require manual confirmation even if directory accounts are auto-disabled. The organization should also revoke tokens, keys, and mobile access simultaneously to ensure no lingering entry points. Documented procedures should define the maximum acceptable delay and identify responsible roles. Timely deprovisioning is the visible signal that identity hygiene is active, not reactive, and that control persists through every user's final minute. Service accounts require equal discipline but different management. These accounts are used by systems, integrations, or automated tasks, not by people. I-1 requires organizations to maintain an inventory describing each service account's purpose, owner, authentication method, and renewal schedule. Credentials should be stored securely, rotated regularly, and disabled if the associated service is retired. Assessors often request this inventory and may sample to confirm accuracy. Service accounts are common weak spots because they tend to persist unchanged, sometimes for years, with elevated rights. Implemented governance assigns each one a named business owner who reviews it periodically. For example, a database connection account may require annual revalidation and key rotation. Treating service accounts as identities, complete with life cycles, controls, and logs, ensures they no longer exist outside the visibility that defines assurance. Password policy remains a visible expression of organizational discipline. In I-1, assessors expect written standards covering length, complexity, rotation, and reuse prevention. Modern guidance favors longer passphrases over forced frequent changes, but still requires updates if compromise is suspected. Policies should disallow common or breached passwords and define lockout thresholds for failed attempts. Implementation evidence includes screenshots from directory settings or password policy files, not just policy documents. Many organizations also integrate password checks against known compromise lists to strengthen resilience. The goal is balance. Encourage usability while maintaining defense. Password policy may seem routine, but inconsistencies between systems often reveal hidden weaknesses. A single outdated domain controller with relaxed settings can compromise the entire ecosystem. Consistent enforcement across all authentication points is what converts intention into measurable compliance under I-1. Session timeouts, lockouts, and reauthentication ensure that access ends when attention lapses. A strong control automatically locks a session after defined inactivity, often 15 minutes, and requires password or MFA re-entry upon return. I-1 assessors review configuration settings or system screenshots confirming timeout values. They may also check that remote sessions and web applications follow the same standard. Lockout policies add another safeguard by temporarily disabling accounts after repeated failed logins, thwarting brute force attempts. Reauthentication protects long-running sessions, especially for administrative functions. For example, changing network configurations might prompt a new credential challenge even within an active session. The combination of these settings proves that security persists even when users step away or attackers probe credentials. Time-based protections are quiet but powerful. They keep control alive even when users forget. Periodic, risk-based access reviews demonstrate ongoing oversight. Managers or system owners must regularly verify that users still need the access they hold. Higher-risk systems warrant more frequent reviews, often quarterly, while lower-risk ones may use semi-annual cycles. I-1 assessors typically request samples of completed reviews showing date, reviewer name, and resulting actions, such as confirmed removals or approvals. Automated review workflows integrated with identity systems help streamline this process and maintain audit trails. A common pitfall is treating reviews as formality, approving everything without inspection. True implementation involves cross-checking roles against job functions and investigating anomalies. Access reviews close the loop of least privilege, confirming that rights granted months ago remain justified today. When performed consistently, they provide both compliance evidence and operational hygiene, ensuring identities evolve in step with roles. Logging of successful and failed access is essential for detection, accountability, and investigation. Every login attempt tells part of the story. Success reveals legitimate use, and failure highlights attack or error patterns. I-1 requires centralized logging for critical systems, capturing user identifiers, timestamps, and source locations. Logs must be protected from tampering and retained for a defined period, often 90 days active with longer archives. Assessors will examine whether logs cover all in-scope systems and whether alerts exist for repeated failures or unusual access patterns. For example, a surge of failed administrative logins outside business hours should trigger immediate review. Successful log tracking enables correlation during incidents, showing precisely who accessed sensitive resources. This dual visibility, knowing both entry and denial, transforms access records from raw data into actionable assurance. Evidence examples that reviewers consistently accept include direct system exports, screenshots of authentication settings, access review records, and audit logs showing real-time activity. Strong submissions pair policy language with operational proof. For instance, a policy stating multi-factor authentication is required is accompanied by a screenshot of the MFA enforcement screen and a report showing adoption rates. Similarly, access review evidence includes the completed certification report, reviewer comments, and a sample of revoked rights. Assessors value authenticity, files generated by systems with visible timestamps and consistent naming conventions. Weak evidence, such as recreated spreadsheets or redacted screenshots without context, invites questions. The most persuasive artifacts tell a clear story from rule to result, showing that access control is not a paper promise, but an ongoing, recorded behavior aligned with I-1's depth expectations. Auditable and consistent access control defines an organization's credibility under I-1. Every safeguard, from unique accounts and least privilege to MFA and periodic reviews, contributes to a chain of trust that can be demonstrated anytime. When access decisions are documented, revocations prompt, and administrative power transparent, assurance becomes self-sustaining. I-1 measures not just presence but reliability. Does the system work today, tomorrow, and 6 months from now in the same disciplined way? Success lies in treating access as a living control, constantly monitored, measured, and refined. When users log in, logs record it. When roles change, permissions follow. When reviewers inspect, evidence awaits. The result is stability built from verification. In the end, auditable access is not about gates. It is about knowing who is inside, why they are there, and proving that knowledge at any time.